Here at the Peak Performers Podcast, we know a ton of entrepreneurs. A lot of times someone with a business idea will spend a whole lot of time, money, energy, and effort into creating this big, beautiful website, right? The colossal testament to their own big fat idea that just kind of sits there. Well, Adam Walker has this team of website building ninjas over at SIdeways8 who've not only streamlined the process of building you a great website, but can actually help you drive traffic to it. And that, my friends, is key. On this episode of the podcast, we chat with Adam Walker about current trends, strategies for revitalizing your tired old website, and the 3 biggest website mistakes businesses make. All that and more coming up next on the Peak Performers Podcast.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. I have been looking forward to this episode for a while because I know that you play in the digital marketing space.
Yeah.
What the heck is digital marketing? I hear this buzzword, over and over again. Dissect this for us so people that are listening today that don't understand digital marketing, because I think it's really inclusive of a lot of different things. Unpack it for us.
Yeah, so I think to me, digital marketing essentially means how you communicate with your potential clients or your potential customers or your audience, really, through the internet. So, for most companies, that starts with a really solid website that communicates well, that converts well, that tells their story, and then it moves from there into everything from search engine optimization to paid advertising to social media and how you present yourself there. And a whole lot of other things in between.
And you're really on the front end of that, right? Is creating the websites. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's our specialty. I like to say that we design, create, maintain, code, improve, and drive traffic to websites. So if it's website related in any capacity, we want to touch it and we want to be a part of it. And for some of the other stuff, we dabble in it as well.
What do you say to those people that say, the websites really aren't that important anymore? There's other aspects that are more important. Answer that.
Yeah, so I would say there's a partial validity to that. There are other aspects that are important. However, I would say the website is the marketing hub. I mean, it's really the thing that everything else drives to. I mean, if you're going to be big on Facebook, ultimately that Facebook page is going to drive people to your website. If you're big on Twitter, ultimately that Twitter account's going to drive people to a website somewhere. And the website then really becomes your validation tool. It is the lens by which someone decides if they trust you or not. It's the final stop, and it's essentially your front porch. If the front porch looks bad, they're not going to come in the store.
That's a good point. I've seen some websites that were probably cutting edge back, 8 years ago. Now it's like, oh man, it just doesn't look good.
That's right.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that business owners are making today with regards to their website?
I think the first mistake that's pretty common is feeling like you can just go ahead and build it yourself and it's not that big of a deal. And my response to that is to tell the story or that happens frequently to me, where I get dressed and I feel like I'm looking really good, and then I go downstairs to tell my wife that I'm ready to go, and then she looks at me and says, "Are you going to wear that?" And I respond by saying, "Of course I'm not going to wear that. This was a joke." And then I go upstairs and change again, right? And I think when somebody creates their own website, they feel like it looks amazing, but when somebody else looks at it, they realize, no, that an amateur did that. So I think that's mistake number one is thinking you can do a professional job yourself when you're not a professional in that particular arena. Alternatively, I think the other mistakes are just really not knowing what you do and what you want to get out of your website. I mean, a new website for the sake of a new website is completely pointless. You need a website that's going to actually do something for you, that's going to move your customers, that's going to do something to grow your business. So I think that's critical.
So more than just a billboard, this is an interactive piece of machine that is used for your business, to drive business.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interactive piece of communication, really, because to me, it all comes down to communication. Are we communicating well to the end user that we really care about? And if we are, and if the website is, then it's going to serve you well, it's going to meet your needs, it's going to improve and expand your reach, and it's going to really make an enormous impact on what you're doing. But if you're not communicating well, and most websites are not, it's going to do either nothing or it's going to actually hurt you. I mean, I'll talk to people often and they'll say, oh, well, we don't get business through our website. And I'll say that you're right. You don't get business through, you lose business because of your website. There's a big difference between those two.
Interesting. Who's holding you accountable? Many will answer, myself. Well, that only goes so far. You'll do more for others than you'll do for yourself. If you're not getting the results that you want, need, and desire, it comes down to your accountability. If you're ready to stop dabbling and really play full out, head on over to thorconklin.com and under services, check out our real accountability system. This is not for the timid or weak of heart. This is only for those individuals that are truly committed to taking their game to the next level. So if a brand new client walks through the doors, well, of course, you probably don't do business walking through the doors because you're an internet company. But if they call you up and say, hey, look, I need a new website. What's the process that you take them through from start to finish? What's the first step that you do?
Well, the first step we want to do is we want to understand why they need a new website, because they're coming for a reason, either because their old website's old or it doesn't represent what they do any longer, or their business has shifted or whatever. So we want to understand why. And then even beyond that, who are you trying to reach? Who are these people? What do they care about? And then what do you care about? And how do we match those two up? Because oftentimes what a company wants to communicate through their website and what their end user, their end customer wants to learn through their website are not the same things.
Go a little bit more old school. You got someone that's,
Okay.
Someone's been in business for the last 20 years. They might be about 55 or something. And yeah, they've got a website, but they kind of view it as just, okay, it has my hours on it. It shows some of my products or my services, but I'm really not using it to drive business.
Right.
How do you, and his niece or, nephew said, hey, come on, Pops, you got to get this thing together. You got to get with the 21st century. Where do you start with someone like that?
Well, to be very honest, the first thing I do is qualify them and make sure that they're actually going to value what we bring to the table. If they value their niece or nephew's work over the work of seasoned professionals and a team of professionals that have done this for a long time, then I would say go with your niece and nephew. You're gonna be happier at the end of the day. So if I'm being very selfish about it, I want to make sure they value what my team has to offer. But then after that, we try to work with them to help them understand what a website can really do, because it really is more than just an empty sort of barren wasteland of an online brochure. It's a lot bigger and broader and more interesting and more alive than that. And so we want them to understand that, and then how they can use it and leverage it to grow their own businesses.
So what would be an example of some of the strategies or the process you would walk through with someone like that?
Well, I think the first thing is we got to go through discovery. So that's going back to that why. Why are you doing this? Who are you doing this for? And then we want to make sure that they're organizing themselves well. You'd be surprised how many companies I talk to that just cannot describe to you what they do. Like I say, okay, well, what do you do? And then they basically talk for 30 minutes. And then at the end of that 30 minutes, I usually can sum up what they do in about 2 to 3 sentences. And they go, oh, that's it. That's perfect. And so really that's the first step, is we have to really be able to understand what they do, and we have to be able to summarize it very succinctly so that their own audience can understand it. And then we have to decide, okay, where are we trying to get people to go? Are we trying to get them to buy something or fill out a form or make a phone call? And then how are we gonna do that? How are we gonna track that? And then we start to structure the site around how we want those users to flow through the site, and what messages we want them to understand and read and interact with as they're going through the site.
And do you generally try to get a user to go down a certain path and end up at one location, or could there be multiple streets or multiple locations in the website?
It depends. That's a great question. So, ideally, you have a specific user type. And so one website will target somewhere between 1 and say 4 user types roughly. And ideally you'd want to take each user type down sort of their own rabbit hole that speaks specifically to their needs and gives them specifically what they want, because that's going to be the best for them. There are times where, there maybe each of those 4 user types also has a common interest that kind of cross over, and then you have to start thinking about, okay, well, how do we make this accessible to more than one user type down more than one of these sort of rabbit holes, and that becomes a little bit more complex. But that's why we're in business. Like, that's the fun problem to solve, and why it's helpful to have a professional do it, because it's seemingly easy, but it gets complex very quickly.
What are the recent trends in this area? It seems like a lot of websites now are very minimalistic. It's it's almost like one page, and you just kind of scroll,
Right.
and that's it. It's like, wow. And I kind of get that, because I think they've gotten so complicated and so convoluted that it's like all this information, you don't see anything. What's happening nowadays?
I think websites are continuing to get more and more simple and more elegant. I think the focus on the user experience is key. The people's sensitivity to user experience, really because of the proliferation of the smartphones, is really important to understand. So, for example, because I'm so used to looking at really good user experience on my iPhone, if I go to a website that has a poor user experience, I will immediately leave that site. It does not matter how interested I am in that company, and I will go find somebody else that has a better user experience. And so that's what we're seeing, more and more focus on that user experience and how we can interact with that user. We're also, simplicity is big, video video backgrounds are big right now. Longer one-page designs, were pretty big for a while, and now I'm starting to see them shrink again. So they are getting a bit shorter, which is good. And really, it's not so much about the length of the homepage. It's really more about how are they serving the user. Are they filtering off those users, like we talked about before, well enough to give them the information they need?
Now, why did you start the company?
Is accidentally a good answer?
Sure, absolutely. That's how I found myself in my first business. Someone came to me and said, "Hey, I want you to start a business." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. No. So I took on my first client in, I believe it was 2001, and basically just said, "Yes, I will do your homepage. I understand HTML. I'll redo your site." And that client is actually still a client of mine. We are having a call with him. I think we had a call with him last week about doing a new site for him as well. I think this is the 5th site we've done from 2001 until now. And basically, I just kept saying yes, really, and got busier and busier. My side job became my main job.
And what are some of the lessons along the way that you've learned?
Oh, man. Well, I think probably one of the first things that I've learned, or that I'm beginning to appreciate, is I have a co-founder with both SIdeways8, which is my for-profit company. I also have a co-founder with my nonprofit, 48 and 48, and I love having a co-founder. Honestly, I think there's a lot of kind of people out there that would say, "Oh, just do it yourself," but I found a lot of value in having a co-founder and having somebody to balance me out. So that's definitely one of the big lessons for me, is that the right co-founder can make all the difference. I guess the wrong one can make all the difference too, in all fairness. Other lessons, I think that I am a risk taker, but in reality, I don't take as much risk as I probably could and possibly should. And so that's kind of an introspective thing for me that I'm sort of thinking through right now in terms of what risks should I be taking that will help to fast track some of the things that I'm doing in both my for-profit and nonprofit organizations. I think, honestly, the biggest lesson for me is realizing that I think your podcast is Peak Performers, right? And I think that all of us can perform at a significantly higher level than we originally believed that we can. And honestly, that's why I love your podcast. That's why I listen to several other podcasts that are in that similar genre, because I want to perform better every single day, and I believe that I can get better every single day. And that's been a really encouraging thought for me as I've grown this company.
What problems does your company solve for its customers?
I think the primary problem we solve is the problem of communication. I've come to believe that in the age of technology moving as quickly as it is, the art of communication has really slid backwards and sort of receded from our consciousness. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to help all the people that we work with really communicate well with their customers. I mean, so if you think about digital marketing as a means or as a form of communication, then ultimately that's what it all has to be about. It has to be about the website communicating the right thing, and then the email campaign communicating the right thing at the right interval, and then the social media communicating the right thing, and the ads communicating the right thing, and to draw people in. But ultimately, the problem we're solving is helping them communicate what they inherently know they need to communicate but can't quite verbalize, we help them communicate that to their clients.
That's an excellent point. I always say I think there's a lot of talking going around nowadays, very few communicating. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
That brings us to the end of another amazing episode of the Peak Performers Podcast. Be on the lookout for part 2 with Adam Walker, where we'll discuss running a successful business, how to win clients and wear a fedora, and making 50-50 partnerships work in the 21st century. That's next time, right here on the Peak Performers Podcast. We'll see you at the top.